The Walt Disney Company's 2025 Annual Meeting of Shareholders has just taken place, the first with James P. Gorman as chairman of the board, and unfortunately for shareholders, it left much to be desired. Let's talk about Bob Iger, pre-screened and pre-approved AI shareholder questions, along with some rather interesting proposals here on That Park Place.
I don't know if you know this, but there was a Disney earnings call earlier today, and it went fine. The stock price is mostly stationary, and I think that's the best way to describe this company right now. Currently, it's kind of stationary. It's not really doing anything. It's kind of like poking it with a stick, wanting it to do something, but it's really not doing anything at all. Vash, you watched the earnings call, I think, at least a little bit of it.
Yes, I did. I absolutely did watch the annual shareholders meeting, by the way, and I put that out as a point of emphasis because this was far less than an earnings call. And again, this is directed at shareholders who are, invested in the company right now. So you'd think we'd get a little bit more substantiation or a substantive presentation, and that's not at all what we received today. What we received today was basically the company just going off and just basically talking about whatever it wanted to talk about. And the proposals and so forth, those were interesting to hear, that's for sure. But really, the questions that are supposed to be kind of the meat and heart of this presentation, well, guess what, folks? They were AI delivered like they were last year. And worse than that, though, I think Valiant actually picked it up during his stream, actually. Not only are they likely to be pre-screened and maybe even submitted by Disney themselves, but Bob Iger actually read the answers. Now, that's very different from an earnings call when you have actual big-time, financial institutions asking questions, right?
Exactly.
And remember, he has to kind of be on the fly there. So his cadence with that, a lot different and a lot more substantial answers there. But you can see kind of who they answer to, can't you? With that whole difference there.
Right. So it used to be that when you did these earnings calls, and by the way, if you want a great breakdown of this by Marvin Montanaro, it's over there on That Park Place. I'm in the VIP section on this, but I believe this one is currently not inside the VIP section. I just have my nifty banner there on the top. So when we talk about these earnings calls, there's supposed to be an opportunity for the average shareholder, not like your Morgan Stanleys, not like your Bank of Americas, not like your MoffettNathanson, but for some person who wants to ask a question about, well, FIGMENT, which we will talk about that. And instead, the last two times, and I will tell you about the specific incident that happened that probably caused this to happen, and it's not just Nelson Peltz. It is not just Nelson Peltz. This time, they decided to go with pre-screened AI-generated questions. Now, why were they AI-generated? Maybe it was just the voice that was AI-generated, but I think that in actuality, what they probably did was kind of wordsmith these questions into their least offensive form. And they were not great questions. Most of them did not stick out. You know what really stuck out to me? That they didn't mention Epic Universe on this call, which is you would think that would come up. Honestly, I mean, it comes up on everything that talks about Disney these days is also talking about Epic Universe, and I think that is a glaring omission that they would first of all pre-screen all of the questions, change them how they see fit, and completely ignore the problems that they're facing right now. But of course, do you remember what they said last time when somebody asked, what's your impact from Epic going to be?
Yes, I do. They said, rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. Oh, and Bob Iger, by the way, he's reiterated several times. Hey, you know what? We knew Epic was coming along, which is why we invested so heavily in our parks over the last 10 years in order to prepare for those level of investments from Comcast with their Epic Universe product. But even if it comes out, even if it does well, guess what, folks? The Walt Disney Company will be right as rain because all those people who come to Epic, they'll be coming to us too.
Isn't that, first of all, that is a perfectly reasonable and believable response from Hugh Johnston. I actually think that Hugh Johnston If he were named CEO of the company, I would be much less worried, because guess what CEOs are supposed to do? They're not supposed to be the creative lead of the entire company, as Bob Iger seems to indicate that he is. By the way, Snow White comes out this evening as of the recording of this. And if that is an indication of the creative power of Robert A. Iger, I don't have a lot of hope for Disney in general. So that's a very long shot away from Walt Disney himself. Let's go see what Marvin says here. Well, he was doing live updates here. Let's see here. The pre-taped Bob Iger video plays, in which he addresses the Disney shareholders meeting and talks about visiting the various parks and headquarters for the company. He then showed off the new BDX droids. He confirms that they'll be in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. Of course, if you are following that park place, you probably already know this, because the BDX droids are the only thing that they have. We're gonna talk about that more here in just a moment, though. So, Vash, if you got comments there, we're going to specifically talk about those BDX droids. Okay. They did talk about Coco. Where this is the thing that I really want to get into. First of all, 2 shareholder proposals were put on there. Well, maybe we should say 3 shareholder proposals. First of all, there was a shareholder proposal that wanted Disney to take advantage of climate change in their economic proposals. It was somebody that was basically saying the whole planet is going to be destroyed, and Disney ignoring this makes them a less profitable company, and it's in the economic best interest of the company to invest in the future because climate change, ... I don't know. It's always kind of magical. They don't really have anything direct to say about that. I'm making no comment on whether climate change is real or not, but I will say that generally speaking, the people who are proposing it are also proposing massive taxes, and therefore, with my libertarian leanings, I am skeptical of anyone coming and saying, you know what we need to do? We need to tax this a lot more. So kindly find someplace else. The other proposals came from the Free Enterprise Project that asked Disney to reconsider its participation in the Human Rights Council, and describing it as a type of mafia that pushes radical ideology onto kids. And the board of directors, it was funny to watch Horacio actually, Gutierrez, everything. The board of directors encourages shareholders to vote no on this proposal. Might as well have been a recording. It was
right.
Hey, it looks like we've got a VR raid. And then of course, there was one that I think is actually legitimate here. Another proponent advocated for Disney keeping politics out of their advertising, citing Disney's support of GARM. GARM was, do you remember what GARM's effect on advertising for Disney was?
I don't know the specifics. From what I recall, GARM was a kind of
You've heard the quote many times if you've watched the Pro Show.
Oh, have I?
That was the team that came together and said Disney should not be advertising on X because of all the toxic
I
content
see.
that they felt was on X.
Yes, the ESG oriented, progressive, anti Elon Musk X group. Yeah. Okay, I got it now.
Which is of course hilarious, because they still managed to find it somewhere inside of themselves to advertise on TikTok, which is I'm going to say has just as much, if not more, of that kind of content that they're supposedly.
Global Alliance for Responsible Media. That is what GARM stands for.
Yep. Let's see here. Okay, I had a little tech issue there. Here we go. Rather than taking direct questions from Disney shareholders during the meeting, Iger took pre-screened questions delivered by an AI voice. He sounded as though he was reading pre-prepared answers to these questions. When touting the company's creative triumphs, Bob Iger ignored Snow White and did not mention it. That makes 3 in a row that he has not mentioned Snow White, because the quarterly call, which was just a few weeks ago, and the previous quarterly call 3 months before that, no mention whatsoever of Snow White. This one had a slight mention of Snow White. It was in that big sizzle reel that they played at the start. Vash, if you were invested in that park place and you submitted a question, and on the investors call, I read a different question and then answered in a possibly pre-recorded statement from Bob Iger, not Bob Iger, from me here. Would you feel satisfied if I changed the question and then didn't answer it?
Yes, I would be very unsatisfied with that approach right there. He did this several times, by the way, especially as it relates to the parks. People would ask a question specifically about, let's say, domestic parks, for example, and he would rattle off about cruising and international parks. That's not exactly the question that was asked. So even in the written statements right there, which with these pre-screened questions and in a format in which you can write in advance everything you're about to read off, not even answer directly, to imbue that level of misdirection right there. Very callous and very cowardly by the entire company, by the way. I'm pretty angry with this whole thing.
Oh, I think it's ridiculous. And when first of all, they weren't asked any questions about Epic Universe, which to me sounds like they deleted any questions about Epic Universe, because I think it is ridiculous that no one there. I mean, the Marvel people get questions about Batman. I'm not, it is impossible that a shareholder would not ask about the first theme park in 25 years to go into the Orlando area on that scale and looks amazing. Yeah. Pardon me.
Well, this is the biggest competition that they've ever faced out there at Walt Disney World. And people might say, well, what about the original Universal? What about Islands of Adventure? Not in the social media era. Okay, this thing is huge. It is big. It is what everybody has been talking about on social media for weeks now combined. Universal is ramping up its previews and so forth. More word is getting out there about just how big this will actually be. Everybody is saying, even Mothra Nathanson and pretty much every analyst out there is talking about how the center of gravity will shift from Walt Disney World towards Universal in their direction right there. You're talking about a profit center for Universal that will compete directly against a Walt Disney World resort that provides 1/3 of the overall profit for the Walt Disney Company on an annual basis right there. And yet we get no questions at all about this. Not a single one. And, I'm sure Iger would have provided his canned answers right there. Oh, we're working on the most products we ever have in our entire history. Oh, really? Is that because you deferred investment for so long that you've been forced to actually invest into your parks now? By the way, you have 10 parks, company-wide that you actively have invested in right here. So in terms of, this is the most we've invested all time. Well, it's also the most parks you've had of all time. And like I said, you deferred investment with these parks for so long that now the checks come due. And so you're forced to invest in these parks to the level at which they are right now. Instead of actually, spreading out their investments and investing on a regular cadence and being actually ready for Epic Universe when it opens. No, they're 3 to 4 years behind the 8 ball. And I'm so surprised, Jonas, that nobody asked about that direct issue. How convenient.
Yeah, man, Vash, you're on fire, and this is great. Now, I noticed that there weren't any questions about another thing that Disney has put off for a very long time, a ride that has yet to stop functioning, the ride of a lifetime. Did you notice there were absolutely zero questions about CEO succession, despite the fact that is supposed to be happening in 2026? They're supposed to be announcing who the next CEO is. They even had James Gorman, probably pre-recorded, on the start of the call. Bob Iger takes zero questions about whether or not Dana Walden, Josh D'Amaro, Jimmy Pitaro, Kevin Mayer, Andrew Wilson, what's the next? Anon Craze, all these names that have floated out there in the air. Tom Staggs, not a single question about that.
Well, Jonas, I mean, to be fair.
Well, they're forming a succession committee, which I'll be joining, so I'll be able to.
I love it. Thank you very much for that.
So you gotta do it. But yes, this is the lead question on everybody's mind, especially as it concerns shareholders, and for everybody at the parks and so forth out there that love theme parks. You want to talk about the biggest, I would say, X factor when it comes to the parks, their performance, the investments, and so forth. It is the CEO position. There's no question about that. That's been proven time and time again. This should be the top of everybody's mind, especially listening to this shareholders meeting and submitting questions right there. And not a single question asked about their succession process right here. A succession process that they've just unbelievably screwed up multiple times within Iger's tenure right here. It is literally in the industry trades and business trades and so forth. This is the leading topic plaguing Disney right now. You already just expanded the search by a year in order to incorporate external candidates right there. We've had multiple articles surrounding their specific candidates that are internal right now. So Jimmy Pitaro, he says he's out. Dana Walden, she's been pushed out in front of that Morgan Stanley technology conference right there. Both Alan Bergman and Josh D'Amaro appeared at South by Southwest together. And not a single question about any of that, what the timeline is, or even if Bob is really going to actually step down in 2026 like he's contracted to do so. It's the whole thing is smoke and mirrors, Jonas. This whole thing was a useless exercise right now by the Walt Disney Company in order to propagandize to its shareholders rather than actually provide them substantive information.
I totally agree. By the way, that is the end of whatever clip that is right there. That was perfect, Vash.
Thanks for watching That Park Plays News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.